my biggest failure ever to this day is me not passing my boards my first time. Again, imagine all of that work, the most decorated pharmacy student ever. And for me to do all of those things and have all those accolades and not pass the test that we go to school for 8 years to do, like I still remember crying and not having money and all this other stuff to then come back and then do it. But again, if I would have passed it at that time, I would have still been working for CVS because I had to get let go because I didn't have my boards. That allowed me to 100% put my focus and energy into one, passing it, but then two, getting the fellowship that I got the following year. Again, learning that lesson of understanding those failures really allowed me to, one, taste it, but then always, every single time, believe in myself to get back up, and also have the looking backwards. I wouldn't have what I have today if I would have gotten it on time.
My name is Fela Abioye, and this is How to Corporate, my digital show dedicated to helping you identify what's holding you back so you can advance your career. Man, let's just open it up, man. Give a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll say is I'm the oldest of three boys. The pastors, Mike and Christy, Okpamen, my brothers, John and James, big up to them. I'm not nothing without them. They taught me how to be a leader. My parents came over from Nigeria, Edo State, Nigeria. Shout out to Edo Power, which I own that hashtag. I own that trademark, by the way. They came to DC, and that's how I got my name, George. My dad went to Georgetown. My mom likes to say she really named me after King George, which is why I'm a mama's boy. But from there, went to Stafford High School, where I played ball, lettered in varsity basketball and football, and where I got scholarships. And it was that summer that I finally went to Nigeria for the first time, got to see my family in Africa, my grandparents, and really understood, I think shifted what I thought about legacy and family. And so that's when I pivoted away from sports, which was a selfish thing for me and I was great at, but it wasn't going to do anything for our family because I wasn't going to the league, to healthcare. And more specifically, as I understood what was the quickest way to become a doctor and what was the most dynamic way to be a doctor, that's why I pursued pharmacy. I went to University of Houston. That's where I fell in love with Alpha Phi Alpha and the concept of fraternity. And I think that's something that is going to follow me throughout my career as I share a little bit more. And as I thought about not just fraternity in terms of how y'all see us hop, I think AWU taught me the power of being different. When you think of Alpha as literally wearing black and gold, AWU, we wore red because of the University of Houston. And so that triggered something to me that you don't always have to be what you are defined as. You can define what you are. And so as I thought about pharmacy, that's important. I thought about not just being your typical pharmacist, which I think is needed in the community, but how could I be a pharmacist or healthcare person in business? And that's how I got the opportunity to go to Texas Southern University across the street. From there, I got the opportunity to go to the FDA in DC. And that took me away from Texas, got to intern at Bristol Myers Squibb. And then I saw what I really wanted to do. From that opportunity, worked for CVS for a year or two, and then went to Eli Lilly in their policy department. Saw that I really preferred to do marketing before I left over to be where I'm at today in Ann Arbor, Michigan at the Ross School of Business. Again, all of my learnings that I've learned on how to represent and be really fraternal and understand community and energy, I've brought along my whole career. And I assume that's what we're going to be talking a little bit more about today. So that's a little bit about me.
Just a little bit, man. Not too much, right? Yeah. No, man, that's awesome. I mean, I think that's important. You know, you think about all your experiences and how community has played such a big factor for you into having success, right? Because that's what this whole platform is about, is really trying to create a community, right, of others to help folks understand that, hey, look, you want to get to where you want to be. You don't have to do it on your own. There's other people who may have paved the way for you beforehand. There's other people who may have experiences in the past that, may have done it, and so you can tap into that network, tap into that community in order to help you get to where you want to be, man. So I'm really excited about that. So you kind of talked a little bit about, right, your experiences, one, going through pharmacy school and your trajectory to get into the big pharma. Most people think of a pharmacist, right? They think of, your local druggist, right? Working at a CVS, which you mentioned, right? A Walgreens or, a grocery store, right? but your career clearly has been much different than that, right? So when you think of a pharmacist, what made you not pursue maybe a quote unquote traditional route when it comes to pharmacy?
Yeah, I don't really. I could say there was a class at University of Houston where it taught us about all the different areas of pharmacy. That's probably where the seed was dropped. But I think it was really more of like the who I am as I'm learning myself. I like to be, I mean, not just the first for first sake, but how do I build pipelines? And so I saw at a very early stage that there wasn't a lot of literally being in the health center or the, if you want to call it in Houston, where we had the medical center, like one of the top medical centers in the country. As I learned more about the pharmaceutical industry, or I learned more about the business of healthcare, there wasn't a lot of pharmacists or Black people that looked like me that were doing that. And I was like, all right, if we don't have it, how can I find a way to get it? Or as I'm finding it, if it doesn't exist, how do I make it? And so that opportunity came to me when I learned more from the Student National Pharmaceutical Association. Rebecca Forte was the president at that time. And also one of my ex-girlfriend at the time, Crystal Booker, who's a great friend of mine. She's also a medical doctor. She opened my eyes into like, oh, there is an opportunity to be in the pharmaceutical industry. And then from that opportunity, it was, okay, taking an action step to not just learn about it, but be an active member of the organization. And so I went from being a member to being an officer. And then I led our first ever conference at Texas Southern University in all of Houston and in all of the organization. And that was the time that I got exposure to more people. And I got put in contact with my now big brother, Enoch Kariuki. And if you look him up, Enoch, Enoch, well, one, he's African, came to Texas Southern, went to go do a fellowship at Rutgers, then worked on Wall Street, then became now literally a CEO, where his company literally about a week or two ago just got acquired. And so as I had that vision, now it's like, all right, so how do I recreate that, and or how do I expand more opportunities for me? And that all started by, again, one, being exposed, two, taking action steps to that so that you can be an example to others, and then three, engaging with people in front of you that are either doing things that haven't been done before and helping to guide you. And I think using that and formula, again, in terms of exposure, being the example, and then engaging is something that I continue to do to this day as I'm venturing off into other areas.
No, bro, that's awesome, man. You know, I think it's a lot to be said because, you know, you saw a route, you know, you had some different experiences around you. You had other people you tapped into, but you decided that, you know what, I know this is the traditional route that they have kind of quote unquote laid the path for me, but I want to find my own way. I want to find a different way to get there, you know, because I think it takes a lot of courage to do that, because in today's world, we specialize in so many different things, where we go to school and we're told, okay, you know, you're going to be an engineer. This is the work that line of work you'll be doing. You're going to go to law school. This is the kind of work you do. You know, you're going to get a degree in education to be a teacher. This is the work that you're going to do. But you're like, yeah, okay, that's cool and all, but I want to do something that taps into some different skill sets, right? And so, like you talked about the business of pharmacy, that's a big piece of it. I think being able to keep your mind open to new things and not necessarily just going with what people tell you to do. I think there's something to be said there.
No, I appreciate it. And I think to your point, even in this world today, like literally there's this thing around ownership or equity. And so many times like this game, this place wasn't created for us or people that look like us. And so it's going to take, as you think of the rules, as you think of the institutions, as you think of the places, looking at that more as like a platform or a place to experience and explore versus like, hey, this is the path. And not to say, hey, for people that need to or want to follow that path, that's great. But it is okay to create in different paths and create ownerships and to create equity so that you're able to feed and not just create jobs versus just have a job. So that instead of just finding a career, you're able to follow like your calling and create calling for other people. And again, I'm so thankful for AWMU, University of Houston, for Texas Southern, and even for the profession of pharmacy for giving me that platform, because now I see and I'm able to take that platform and make it bigger to not just pharmacy, but healthcare, not just healthcare, but wealth care, not just wealth care, but connecting those two together. And again, not just doing it for me, but showing others how to do it through other platforms and places.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So as you kind of, talking about where you're trying to get to, I think about, just, you worked in a lot of different areas, right? When you're with your last employer, I mean, from strategy to marketing to recruiting, D&I, business development, and that was a lot compacted to me in a short window, right? And only 7-8 years, give or take, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Were all those moves strategic? Were you always kind of on this path of, man, I need to tap into all of these different areas so I can kind of build some of my knowledge base as I go to try to do something bigger on my own in the future? Or how did you even go about creating those opportunities to even cross over? Because I think sometimes, when people want to do something different, right? And say, hey, look, I've been doing this for a while, the last 5-10 years, and I want to try something different, but I don't necessarily want to leave the organization I'm with. How did you, make those pivots?
Yeah. So strategic, that was the question. Were they strategic? They were strategic in the sense that I wanted to make sure I got exposure to other areas. But in between those times, if you just look at my rise, it looks like just a rise. But I wouldn't even call it fired. I got let go twice in there. And when I say let go, big companies go through reorganizations. And there was twice that happened. That really allowed me to, one, understand, do I really want to do this? And this be in pharma and do all this stuff, because it happened twice. And literally those are some of the lowest times. But then it also literally opened up opportunities, because if not, the first time, and the first time it happened when I was doing my payroll, I was like, no, I'm going to stay in this role for another year to prepare for business school. And God was probably telling me, nah, your time is now. And even though that time period was probably some of the darkest times that happened, it was that failure that allowed me to find who I truly was, and also gave me the first ever opportunity to be the first ever pharmacist in consumer marketing. And so I got the opportunity, because of me being let go, to find myself and find an opportunity to lead a product launch from beginning to end. And that experience is invaluable. That's the experience that then off of that got me sponsored to go to business school, to where I'm at now. But then also off of that, imagine you're at your highest high. Again, it happens again, to where we do a reorganization. But then because I had that perspective, I already knew something else was coming. And at that time, that's what allowed me to then become the first ever marketer, not even just pharmacist, first ever marketer, leader our startup team. As we're developing a new teams within Eli Lilly, and I led our startup division before that happened. And again, neither one of those opportunities would have happened with that failure. And so to the question of strategy, I definitely wanted to make sure that I was being exposed to other areas, but I'm not going to lie to say that I made all of those things happen. But your question also that was asked was, how did I make that happen? I came in through a fellowship in policy, and I made sure that I met people outside of policy. I also made sure that I can get super involved with not just policy, but Eli Lilly as a whole. And so that's where myself and a group of people, and I'll say Danielle Nevels specifically, we felt that, hey, we have the Black network, we have the Women's network, we have the Veterans network, we have the Disabilities network, but there's not a network for early career professionals. And we went back and forth on calling us young professionals or anything like that. And we're like, you know what? We don't want it to just be about young people. We want it to be also the acronym ECP to stand for experienced career professionals, because you also need allies. And I say that to say that platform of allowing people to see what we can create inside a company allowed me to then be competitive for a marketing role when I had no marketing experience, to then get my first actual payer job. And so I wanted to make sure, as we talk about your first question of strategy, the strategy to have a bigger vision than me, yes, was there, but then I had pitfalls that I didn't control. Also, my strategy when I first got into was to make sure that I got super involved in the company that was 40,000 employees, to make it smaller, to make it more of a community, to make it more of a fraternity. And we did that through ECP. But we knew that ECP wasn't just about early career professionals. We needed allies and experienced career professionals. And so as you're building something, as you're growing something, how are you making something big smaller? How are you making sure you have a big vision for yourself, but know there's going to be failures? And then also, how are you making sure you have allies that identify with what you're trying to do, not just on what they're getting from you, or not just what you're going to get from them, but what you're also going to give to them. Because also when we were getting more and more exposure as early career professionals, we were taking away from experienced career professionals, but we were intentional in ensuring that they got exposure and they got some advice and equity too. So lot or big lesson in that question, but I think all of that was strategic.
Yeah, no, man, I appreciate that context, because I heard a few things that kind of stood out to me. One was not letting failures, right, dictate what your life is going to be, right? So you had situations that you might have, got let go or got laid off, and that happens to people all the freaking time. And we can get caught up in that, right? Be in the moment and say, man, this really sucks, and get down on yourself and really kind of succumb to that. But, that has no necessarily any bearing on what your future will be, right? And so you said, okay, hey, it's cool. It is what it is. Well, it's not really cool, but it is what it is, but I'm going to figure it out anyway. And you parlay that into a new opportunity, right? But how did you do that, right? And the other second piece that I heard out of that is building relationships, building your network, right? Not only with early career professionals, but also with other experienced professionals, within your organization. You were clearly the front, runner on trying to lead the charge on a lot of these different initiatives. And so you clearly was able to build some equity within your own name and the work that you were doing, and building some credibility, which is the third piece that I heard from that, with other people. And I think people sometimes, they forget the importance of building credibility with others. And credibility doesn't always mean just the work that you do day in and day out, and so credibility sometimes is just a part of the relationship aspect. Just knowing that, hey, look, you're a good person, you're reliable. If I call you, you'll answer, you'll come through, you're a straight shooter, etc. So, when situations happen and say, hey, you know what, we're going to, have some layoffs, but you know what, I really like George. He's a hard worker. He's doing a lot of great things in his organization. We'll find a place for him. So that happens all the time behind closed doors that people don't always realize. So, when they come down as, big organizations come down and have reorgs and say, okay, we're going to have layoffs. Don't think that they don't have the same conversations to say, okay, of this entire department that we're going to, lay off, which of these folks do we want to keep? Which of these folks do we feel like are top talent? Which of these folks do we feel like are important to the organization? So you got to find ways, right, to show your value regardless of what your role is. So I think that's a big piece of it. And clearly you were able to do that, but I don't want people to miss that aspect of it. Does that make sense?
That's true. That's true, man. That's so true.
Yeah. So, I guess, just staying in that same realm of all the different things that you've done, right, from, leading the Student National Pharmacy Association, all the work that you clearly were doing with your last, employer. What's your philosophy, or what has your philosophy evolved to when it comes to building relationships, either inside of work or outside of work? Like what does that look like to you?
I mean, that's the first thing. I think so many people use the word networking, and it's not networking. Like, you have a network, but you have a network of what? Relationships. A network of what? Connections. And so my philosophy is like any relationship. Like, some people are just going to be in my life because they're in my life. Like, feel like you're stuck with me because we're AWU. So that's my relationship. That's literally why we're talking today, because I'm probably not on your podcast today if you didn't know me off of that, or if you didn't see my journey, literally speaking, because there's a million podcasts and I'm not on all those podcasts. I'm here where I'm here today. But then there's others that you actually go and you build a connection. Because again, people think that a LinkedIn post or Instagram or a like, and while those could actually literally be a connection, you still have to build on top of that. Just like you have to build on top of a house. Like, you open up a door to a house, you still got to build it by putting furniture or doing other things like that. And just like that, just like a bath or how you brush your teeth, you got to continue for the relationships that you feel need to be stronger, or the connections that you feel need to be stronger, you got to rinse and repeat those, quote unquote, every day. And every day can be every year, every quarter, things of that nature. But again, these are things that you're going to definitely have to water and grow over time. And so my philosophy is to treat things not as network or networking, but to treat them as connections and relationships. And I think just like any relationship, you treat your brother different than you treat your mother, then you treat different than your girl, than your frat bro, all those things, understanding and putting into sections what those are. But then also, just like when you have Thanksgiving, intentionally bringing those together here and there. And that's how you grow your connection, your relationships over time. The last thing I'll say is,
hey, if you're enjoying what you're hearing and learning something new, take a second to rate this episode and write a review. Oh, don't forget to share with a friend or a colleague. All right, back to the show.
I think for my relationships with my connections, because all that's great, the action that I do more times than not is that I invest or give. And so there's times, and people will say this all the time, both literally because I said those words, you think of money, and sometimes it is, but then it's also time. And sometimes it's also like advice. And sometimes also, and I don't think about what I'm going to get back. It's going to come back to me when it comes back to me, because again, when you invest in something, I mean, there's day trades and all that stuff, but I invest long term. And so when you think of that and you invest and you close the books, and then 5 or 10 years from now, like, you have what you have, that's how I treat my relationships. And over time, vice versa. If I'm not getting things back because of what I'm blessed to have, the network that I do have, or the relationships that I do have. Just over time, those relationships that are not like dually, I don't check them. It just falls off. It just does by happenstance. So that's how I see things, and that's how like actions that I take in my life with those.
No, man, that's awesome. I think that's you named something I think that was important in there is investing, right? Like investing in relationships. That's how they become relationships. And, there's always different levels, like you kind of mentioned, right? Your friends versus your parents versus, fraternity or sorority, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Everybody's kind of got a different level, and those relationship levels kind of move up and down just as we continue to evolve in life. So, but it's important to understand the key difference between relationships and networking. That's something that, I've talked a lot about on this platform, and I'm going to keep talking about it because I think people need to really understand, because I think we get misconstrued on what that really is, especially in today's world when we think about social media, right? And the aspect of connecting on social media, right? I don't know how many followers you have, right? But let's just say you got 10,000 followers, right? And anytime you post something, you get, 1,000 likes, 100 comments, etc. You think, oh man, I got all these, friends. I got all these people in within my network, right? But, how many of those people could you call if you were on the side of the road and you had a flat tire and had no way to get it changed, right? Like that's not a relationship, right? That's just it is a bit of a quote unquote connection. It's a bit of a quote unquote network, but that's not a relationship. And so there's levels to it. And I think we got to understand and not misconstrue what we see on social media versus, what we see in real life, because, I think there's a difference. Not to say that you can't build relationships through social media. I most definitely think that you can, but we just got to understand the differences between the two and how that plays out in the workplace, how that plays out in our personal lives. So I'll get off my soapbox, but I just think we got to understand the difference,
I definitely agree. And I know your audience per se might be of a certain generation. I do think to build upon that, we are going to be going into a world where quote unquote social media becomes real life as we think of Web3, as we think of metaverse and all these other things. And so to the point that's being made, it's also about just being intentional. Like you can have 10,000 followers, putting quotes in the air. For the people that are looking at this on audio. And again, all 10,000, probably not even one, will help you on the side of the road. But if you're intentional and you're trying to do something for your followers per se, developing and being intentional with those followers from a digital standpoint, and if you want to call it converting them to real life things through services and products from that, can create connections and stuff. But you have to be intentional with converting.
Yeah, no, and so don't get me wrong, right? I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It's investing the time within your listeners, within your followers, right? I'm hoping everybody that listens and watches this understands that I'm investing this time and this energy to everybody that's listening here, because I'm trying to pour into those folks. I'm trying to pour into people that I'm hoping to get something out of it. So no, man, I 100% agree with you there. So as I think about kind of staying in the social media realm a little bit, right? I deem you as a IG curator, right? So, right. I mean, you're always smiling, man, always providing a lot of good energy, right? And that's, some of the topic here, or the essence, quote unquote, around all this. And I feel like you always are providing really positive vibes around just what you do and anybody that you're around. How much does that matter to you as far as like protecting your space, right? Making sure that the people that are around you, the people that come into your life, and how you present yourself, in business or in your personal life, how much is energy and being positive and all that play a factor to you?
Man, it's everything. I mean, energy, and I'll play on it in a little bit, but we're not right now. Energy to me is like energy ecosystem, like the people around you, like you said, like your circle. And one of my hashtags is support your circle. That's both like literally people, but it's also like the things and the energy around you. And I don't even know, because as you're talking, I need to figure out when this was exactly, but there was a switch on IG that happened back in the day. IG used to be about like literally just posting everything you're doing. And when I say that, like almost like a floss, like if someone got a new car, they're flossing. If someone got like a new house, they're flossing. And again, I'll go back and see when that pivot happened, but it was a time when I was like, you know what? one, I'm not going to post as much as I used to post. And two, I'm not going to be flossing. Like I'm literally using my platform to celebrate other people. And I think I went on a rampage of like literally not posting anything by myself for a while. And I just posted nothing but my friends. And then this was before the stories came out, and then the stories happened. So that allowed me to not have to post, but I can use the story feature. And it was allowing me to, like, to your point, show people, like, one, I'm a pharmacist. I'm a Black pharmacist, which there's not a lot of Black pharmacists. But even as I say that, you think a Black pharmacist or any pharmacist only a CVS. I'm gonna show y'all, nah, we got business shops. Then I'm from Houston and going to Indy, and people think of Indianapolis, they think of cornfields. Like, nah, I'm gonna show you that Indy is lit. And literally it is. Like, you look on anything today now, Indy is one of the fastest growing people for young professionals. But I was showing that before it happened. And now I'm in business school at Michigan, again, one of the top institutions in the nation. And I'm not just talking about business school, I'm just talking about institutions in general. And we just beat, like, while I'm here, we just beat Ohio State. So I'm literally, not even just like playing games, literally living history. And I want to show that. And going back to your energy and your ecosystem, like, people think like you have to live in quote unquote failure, or live in like what people think. Like, nah, I want to show you that no, you can live and succeed by amplifying others. You can live and succeed by being in places that haven't been seen before. You can live and create what is there. And so to go back to your question, like, energy is everything to me, because if I don't have that, then I'm sitting here listening to what everybody else thinks and being dark and flossing. And I don't think that's what life is about. I think life is about using your platform to empower others, supporting your circle. And as you invest in pouring to other people, I think it, like, all boats rise.
Yep. No, man, that's facts, man. I think that's one. I think you definitely utilize your platform in a great way, and I think people get that from you, right? Like, they get that essence of like, okay, there's a lot of positive vibe, a lot of support in your circle, which is, at the end of the day, that's what you're putting out there. So hopefully that also returns back to you. So, and in this day and age of social media, and I keep referencing it because it's a part of it. It's a part of what we, it's a part of our lives. And the energy that's put out there can be very, very toxic sometimes. And so, and you can get caught up in certain things and get into a certain wavelength, right? And it starts to affect you personally and affects you at work and how people view you and perspective and stuff like that. So I think it's important to talk about how you control your headspace and, what you put out there, right, into the world, and what's coming back to you. I think that's just a element that sometimes we forget, right, to think about. So thinking about like where you invest your time and your energy. So you co-founded a nonprofit, Pharmacy Initiative Leaders, PIL, right, and you spent a lot of time with this organization. Could you maybe tell a little bit about like what this organization is and the essence of why this is important to you?
Yeah, no. So the first thing I'll say is PIL's Pharmacy Initiative Leaders. It was started by Dr. Brian Sackey at Howard. And I always love to give the origin story of anything. That's why I even started with my name. And I think it's very important for PIL's. It was started at a time where SNAFA was, and still is, one of the predominant organizations for Black pharmacy students. And it was something that I was literally a part of. I was the first ever executive chairman, executive consultant, and I love the Student National Pharmaceutical Association still to this day. But I also saw there was a cap of like, after you became a pharmacy student, maybe you get involved with other organizations, but there wasn't an organization that I saw that was covering not just pharmacy, but healthcare. And as Brian and Josh, who were the two people that brought this concept to me, so Brian started it at Howard University and was just a, if you want to call it, group, at like a university group. Brian had the vision with Josh to take this nationally. And so in order to do so, he got 3 SNAFA executive leaders, Josh Blackwell, Dr. Josh Blackwell, and Dr. Onye, who just had a baby girl. Shout out to Onye. And us 4 started it. And if you look at our backgrounds, though, all 4 of us, while we might be Black, have different perspectives of pharmacy. So Sackey he did a residency, and he has a lot of letters after his name. So I don't want to even mess up his justice, but let's just say he's very specialized. Very specialized. And we have Onye, who's not just a professor at the University of Houston, go Cougs. She's also in oncology, and so she's an oncology expert. And then you have Josh, who did his master's at the University of Houston as well, in terms of after pharmacy school, but then in a health administration standpoint. And then you have myself from the business aspect. So as you think of all those 4, there's not still to this day an organization that's trying to change the face of healthcare at every stage. And that's what our vision is not just at the world of pharmacy, but to really change the face of healthcare at every stage. And this is our 5th year. We call it our birth year. And so we are making a pivot. We're going to make a pivot to where we're going to focus on our 4, and I'll call them 5 C's. That being the community first. Our community, if we do what we're supposed to do and invest to impact our community, that will then impact our classrooms. And if we do what we're supposed to do to invest to impact our classrooms, that will affect the careers that not just pharmacists have, but that all of healthcare has. And if we're able to impact our careers, that gives us more capital. And if we're able to do that capital, then we can connect that, which is the 5th C, to reinvest back into the community, to our classrooms, to our careers, and to our capital. And it becomes a virtuous cycle that goes all around. And so as we see PILS as the organization that will change the face and feel of healthcare. And it's something that I've invested a lot of time into up until this day. But it is something that I'll use this opportunity to share. There's a bigger vision for me personally, and bigger vision that ties everything that I'm about. As I've shared today about supporting your circle, I'm blessed to have the name G. And as I think of energy, not just energy, but energy, I've been blessed to have the vision of having the circle of healthcare, which I've had so far, but now going into the circle of wealth care. How can I provide financial wealth to the people around me? And so in doing that, I don't think they're separate. Remember, health is wealth, but I also think that wealth is health. And so how can I connect those two? Again, with the G being in the middle, G not standing just for George, but G standing for how to be grounded, how to be able to galvanize others, how to generate, and then eventually how to grow. And if we can follow that in terms of not just how we're building out PILS, but how we're building out all of the small businesses that are started right now to be just giant enterprises, investing back into each other and investing in each other's circles, then I think that that's something that we can truly do. And so that's what I hope to, in the year of 2023, when I graduate, officially have not just off the ground, but have operating, and to really support my circle with not just words, but support them with the financial opportunities, to support them with the merch, to support them with the media, and support them with any and everything that they need in that ecosystem. And so PILS is the healthcare standard for that. And then I'll have a couple of, as my partners that are helping me do this now know, we'll have that to come in the next year or two of how I'll be having another organization from a financial standpoint and connecting those two together.
Man, that's awesome, man. I have to give you a new title, philosopher, over here. You know, man, you got your hands full, man. So, but that's awesome. Honestly, like, big ups. You know, clearly, you've already put forth the work. You're putting forth the effort, and again, going back to the word community, as we talked about at the beginning of it, I think this just kind of falls in trend with, you know, what you're all about and what you're doing and what you aspire to be. So I think that's awesome, man. So, so you kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think it's important to not only highlight the successes, but also, you know, the opportunities, the failures that we all have in life. We all go through rough periods, right, in our careers and our personal lives, but I maybe wanted to have you maybe take a second and, you know, as you think about your career, maybe what was a rough period that you had through your working force, or even just, again, through school, that you felt like, man, this was really, really tough? And how did you maybe work through that?
Man, I mean, the hardest thing was getting my PharmD degree. I mean, full stop. My first year, I got the 4.0, but then after that, like, I failed calculus, and I was probably like, okay, whatever, I'll get into time. And then fast forward 3 years, I didn't get into pharmacy school when I thought I was. But again, that was the first gift, because that's when I got the opportunity to pledge. And it was probably that first failure that every single time, like, to this day, I know it's like every time I fail, something good is coming out of that. Because if I didn't become an alpha after that, then maybe I wouldn't have this perspective. But I know I don't have this perspective without becoming an alpha. And then after that, I got into pharmacy school, and then I failed chemistry. And I say that because, people say I got A's in orgochemistry, Dr. Bot, like, I was killing. So for me, it was a lesson in being overconfident in myself, like putting too much weight on myself and not doing the work. And so it was that shook me to understand, okay, that even though that failure happened, something good came out of it. Because if I did not graduate on time, but if I had graduated on time, I wouldn't have got my FDA internship and my BMS fellowship, because they came in my last 3 months of school, literally. And so again, my failure gave me something greater. And then finally, my biggest failure ever to this day is me not passing my boards my first time. Again, imagine all of that work, the most decorated pharmacy student ever. And for me to do all of those things and have all those accolades and not pass the test that we go to school for 8 years to do, like, I still remember crying and not having money and all this other stuff to then come back and then do it. But again, if I would have passed it at that time, I would have still been working for CVS because I had to get let go because I didn't have my boards. That allowed me to 100% put my focus and energy into one, passing it, but then two, getting the fellowship that I got the following year. Again, learning that lesson of understanding those failures really allowed me to, one, taste it, but then always, every single time, believe in myself to get back up, and also have the looking backwards. I wouldn't have what I have today if I would have gotten it on time.
That's awesome perspective, honestly, because it's important, I think, to really highlight, the aspects of, failures aren't always just failure. Sometimes it really is just the opportunity for you to take a step back and show you need another path, and so sometimes when you apply for that role, or you try to, pass that board exam the first time around, or whatever the case may be, hey, maybe you needed that, in order to get you to where you're supposed to be. So, but to stay encouraged and keep the energy up in order to get you to keep going, I think is an important aspect of it too, man. So that's awesome. So, man, so I'm going to kind of start to bring this to a close, but man, I really appreciate, your time here. So for anybody, again, listening, watching, that may want to go down a similar path, or may want to do some of the things that you're doing, one or two or any action items, man, that you would highly recommend, like, hey, this is what has helped me to get to, be successful and get to where I want to be, man. Just any recommendations out there?
Yeah. I mean, I'll follow my formula for energy, like my energy, like literally look inside yourself first and understand and ground your own self in your origin, like ground yourself in your origin and what matters to you. And you have to really, truly understand yourself. So first, ground yourself in your origin and what matters to you. Second, when you find that, galvanize others around that. And so when you're thinking of what you're trying to do, how are you galvanizing others around that community? I've been blessed to see it in action in AWU or SNAFA, but then I created my own in PILS and in the future, the OGO group. Then when you're able to do that, how are you generating other opportunities for others? And so again, as you're talking about, you grounded people, you've galvanized people. How do you generate, not just follow, but generate new things? Then that's how you will finally grow outcomes. And so grow those things. The reason why I'm able to remember all of the things I just said in terms of the inner G, one, my name is G, that's my origin. But if you heard me, everything was GO, which is also like my initials of George Okpamen. And so as I've done that, I've literally created a formula from my own self to allow people to help others. Now, George, that sounds great because marketing, all right, can you give me some really even more tangible or practical ways? Go find something that you're really curious about or interested in. Go dig deep in that and get a couple of people to help you out to do that, because you're always going to have to sell and bring people around you anyways. And from that, create things that haven't existed before. There was a rule that someone said in terms of innovation. Sometimes you just have to change things 3%. That's innovation. People think you have to create something that's very brand new. Sometimes you just got to do it 3%. And then from there, as you continue to do that over and over again, the consistency happens, then you grow. And so that's the way that I would tell you to do it. And again, feel free if you need to reach out to me. I'm public everywhere, George Okpamen or at George Ock. I have another alias for other things, but I'll leave that there. You'll find it once you find George, and I won't bloody the waters with that.
Appreciate that, man. Philosopher George, sports book, GO, energy guru, man. I appreciate that, man. This has been awesome, man. I think folks, I think got a lot out of this, man. I definitely think I've gotten plenty out of it, man. So I appreciate your time. So I think you already provided any contact information. Is there anything else that you want to share just about yourself, man, before we bring this to a close real quick?
Less about myself, because I don't want to do a disservice to somebody. That somebody was Virgil Abloh. Yep. So that was the 3% rule for Off-White. He just changed. If you look at stuff, he changed it out 3%. But then I'd love to give a shout out to my lady, Porsche. I think that's also, I know we haven't talked about that at all. I think for me, that's a blessing to have a partner that has a vision for you. I know you yourself, your partner is one of my favorite people in the world. And I know she's been a rock in your life and literally giving you another human being. But that's something that I think is very important, to have a partner in your life that's able to ground you and or water your own dreams versus take away from you. Again, similarly, that's investing in you and you're able to invest in. And I'm thankful for her and what she's done, and very grateful for how she's been able to ground me over these last couple of years with everything going on. Thank you for not just this podcast, but you've not just been along this journey. You've been someone that I needed on the journey in terms of whether it's a place to stay when you were living in Florida or Vegas when you were there as well. And so continuing to be a shining light and excited to be a part of this How to Corporate community and looking forward to see it grow as well.
Appreciate that, man. Appreciate that. Nah, man. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For more content, click the link in my bio to follow How to Corporate on all social media platforms. Until next time, keep building.